And we're here with Conor Ryan. Conor, how are you? Welcome back. What is up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. You are finally home.
I am
And
finally home. I'm
people
not
on
in a hotel room. I am not collecting rocks out in the Rocky Mountains. I am back in beautiful Marlborough, Massachusetts. I have my Dunkin' Donuts that you can't see on the green screen, but it is here.
it's
Life
there.
is slowly getting back to normal.
It's your new normal, so to speak, as we would
Ooh,
say last year, new normal. By the
topical.
way, hate that word. Hate
Yes.
that word. Anytime I see someone tweet new normal, I'm like, did you not just go through what we all just went through? Why would you want to what are you doing? Why would you say that? But yes, happy to have you back. And as people saw on Twitter, you did get me a rock. At some point, I
Mm-hmm.
will get it. It will be a beautiful ceremony when it's given to me. It'll be
Yes.
unbelievable. But yes, so you are back. You are back. And can't say you missed much. Can't say you missed much. You did not miss a
I've
lot around
noticed.
here.
Yes.
There's nothing really changed. There was a flood. Well, actually, no, that was in New York where you actually ended up being after. Um,
Yes. Not fun.
you missed nothing. You didn't miss a single thing.
There's always a
Nothing
threat.
happened.
There's always that threat when you check your phone because when you're out in like a national park, you got no reception out there. So all of a sudden you come back and all of a sudden your phone started like pinging like 10 things in a row. It was usually just like Adidas sending me a push notification or something like that. There was no like, we got him for 8 years, like at Charlie McAvoy signs. Like, that would be the worst case scenario. None of that happened, which is good for me. But also, I'm sure for Bruins fans wanting to get through this final leg of the offseason, pretty tough drag we're in right now.
We've traded for Jack Eichel. Welcome
Yeah.
home, Jack.
Yeah.
Yes, I did expect that to happen while you were out in the desert. It's funny though. You mentioned the having your phone just like overwhelmed with pings and things like that. When I was younger, my dad had a very strict data policy on all of us. The data plan was very strict, and we would always go over. So it was one time he's like, you know what? We're just gonna once you go over, data's off. Can't use data. Can't use internet. Have fun like trying to text anybody. So you'd go out, and this is for like a year or two. You go out after the data's out, and you just be like, just have a It was literally just a
Walking in the
telephone.
void. You
Yeah,
got
this
having
and you
a
get
brick in your pocket.
you'd hit Wi-Fi, and your phone would just be like it would just all this shit, and it would just be so overwhelming. But yes, anyways, in the land of the Bruins, there's not a ton that's going on. Spoiler alert. But we figured today would be a good time to talk about some guys who we expect to kind of, will they bounce back after tough years last year? Because as good as the Bruins were last year, there were some guys on the roster who definitely do not have career years. And we'll start with this one, Jake DeBrusk. Jake DeBrusk did not have a good year last year. You could argue he was the most underperforming player on that roster by a long shot. Was clear that he did not, I know Ty Anderson had said that maybe he was going through some stuff. Totally, absolutely could have been the case, but nonetheless was just not great last year. And obviously my prediction of him leading the Bruins in goals did not come to fruition. But do you think that he's in a position this year to actually bounce back?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it all depends on what you're constituting as a bounce back year. Like if you're going into it expecting him to be maybe what he was in that 2018-19 season where he almost had 30 goals, I think you're raising the expectations a little bit too high. And I think for the Bruins, I think all you're looking for him in this new role where he's most likely going to be the third line left winger, if he gives you, 15, 20 goals and just plays consistently night in, night out, meshes well with what will probably be two new line mates in Foligno and Howla. That's all I think you're really looking for. And I think for, you hope that the stars kind of align in terms of just how a clean slate can kind of get set for him this year, because you hope that, with, post pandemic, post, for him testing positive, post the isolation of last year, hopefully if he's vaccinated, they're allowed a lot more freedom on the road of like not being stuck in a hotel room, all those things that as much as people just, stare at straight line production for players and why they're underperforming, like all those little things weigh on players. And especially a guy who, I think we all know DeBrusk is definitely a guy who's at his best when he's out and about and, being social. He's a gregarious guy. It's tough for guys like that who I think are kind of, crammed in a hotel room all year long. And especially when you're struggling, you don't have the the outlet to, go out to dinner with your pals or just go out on the town for a day. Like that means a lot to players. It means a lot to not just athletes, anyone, if you're kind of pent up, stuff kind of thing like that. So I think when you look at the way it's mapped out for him, I think there's definitely an avenue for him to break through. I don't think I would be shocked if he's the same player he was last year, where it just seemed like he couldn't find his game and he was kind of in the doghouse as well. So, and I think the Bruins are cognizant of the fact that they got to, put the wheels in motion to kind of put him in the best position to succeed. So, Cassie's mentioned multiple times that he's the third line left winger. I think you need to keep him in that spot. That's where he's most comfortable. That's where he's generated the most production. So even if it's not, a top 6 role with Krejci now, if he's able to give you 15, 20 goals in that third line and add some much needed secondary scoring, it's a good opportunity for him. And if he plays well, it raises his stock for a new contract next year. And, you look at how important that role is. It's not a top 6 role like it was in years past, but he's still a very important piece of this team on that third line. Like, you need, as much as Foligno and Howell are intriguing candidates, you also need a guy that can bury the puck and add secondary scoring. And most likely it's going to fall on DeBrusk to kind of fill that role in that third line that, as intriguing as it is, we really don't know that much about right now, how they're going to function.
Yeah, see, what makes me a little apprehensive with DeBrusk, because, obviously you mentioned kind of setting the bar low for a good season from this year. It's tough after last year, because I really thought in 1920 that was his quote unquote down year. And I said, well, my God, he's on a bridge deal. He's going to, fight back so hard, have a much better year in 2021. And it didn't happen. And obviously the circumstances you mentioned with COVID and the, having to basically isolate yourself all the time don't exactly help, and definitely will be something that will be lifted off him this year. But it's apprehensive, I'm apprehensive about it in a sense. Like, can I really pencil him down for certainly a bounce back? I mean, again, you look at just his page, 5 goals, 14 points, 41 games. I expect him to have a lot more than that. And again, a lot more, as you said, is 15 goals, 20 goals, and even just being noticeable. I mean, how many times last year did you finish covering a game and you think to yourself, oh yeah, Jake DeBrusk played? Like, you almost didn't notice him. He was invisible out there. So he's one that I'm a little apprehensive about, after my big prediction last year. I'm a little apprehensive about him this year. Another thing was Marissa and Jemmy, old friend of the show, tweeted, what would NHL on Nick look like? And I thought I had a pretty accurate tweet about this. I said Jake DeBrusk has MVP written all over him. Jake DeBrusk would be like the prototypical Nickelodeon most valuable player, whatever that was. The game to like Mitch Trubisky. Absolutely could see Jake DeBrusk getting like slimed or like loving it. That would be like so up his alley.
Yes.
So hopefully a better year is in the cards for him this year. Charlie Coyle is another one. And that was one that obviously most fans know. I know Dom Luszczyszyn and The Athletic kind of had him as one of the worst contracts in the league, or not one of the 10 worst, but one of like the, could have made the 10 worst. Yeah. Honorable mention, a dishonorable mention, so to speak. But I think it's way more realistic to expect a big bounce back out of him, given his new role and the line mates he's going to be playing with, because one of the big knocks on him, or not knocks, one of the things going against him these past couple of years is he's always getting, last year he got all of David Krejci's guys he couldn't work with. So do you think a Charlie Coyle breakout or a bounce back is sort of in the cards?
I definitely think a bounce back's more in line with him. And I think you just look at the multiple factors working in his favor and what constitutes a bounce back year, right? Like, I don't think Charlie Coyle is going to step into David Krejci's shoes and all of a sudden he's a 65, 70 point guy, right? Like this big revelation. But if he plays every game, plays his kind of trademark game that we saw, that even though Charlie Coyle is not a guy that sometimes you can base the baseline production off of, right? Like maybe he's not, securing a nice assist every shift, but if he's controlling the puck, if he's holding on to it, if they're generating ozone looks and it's a productive shift, those things matter and they mount up as a game goes on. But you factor in, hopefully a return to form for him individually where he's hopefully healthy. He's not, nursing that knee injury, which, I imagine we're going to talk to him at some point once training camp opens, and we'll kind of get more insight on, when an injury was, how bad was it? Because of course they're going to say, during the end of the regular season, when we do our breakup Zoom calls like that, it was something you just got to fight through. But it's always interesting to get the perspective, a year removed from it to see like how bad it was, because it's pretty noticeable. Like you didn't see those trademark, Coyle shifts I think we're all used to seeing. So you look at that, you look at his own individual health, plus the fact that he's got a lot more talent around him. You know, as much as you don't have a guy like Taylor, like David Krejci there, Taylor Hall could very well be the new guy that's kind of the tasked with the job of driving play on that line. He might be on the wing, but I mean, we saw it last year where even though he's a winger, he's a guy that can make offense out of nothing, great in transition, you know, can get jump started on the play. So I think he'd be a good compliment for Charlie Coyle in that regard. Plus you have Craig Smith, who I think we agree is a very solid complementary piece on a line like that, where good two-way player, shot first guy. So if he's waiting down low, if Taylor Hall is breaking into the offensive zone, Charlie Coyle's holding on to the puck, shielding the puck from other players, and you got Craig Smith ready to rip a shot. Seems like a good like mix right now. Again, we'll see how it translates. We can look at all this stuff and we'll see how it translates. You know, it's same with DeBrusk. You know, maybe playing with Nick Foligno and the way he kind of plays can rub off on DeBrusk, and he gets back to kind of that, you know, heady forechecking style of game that we saw from DeBrusk early in his career. But frankly, we don't know until we see it in an actual game setting, right? Same with Coyle. The pieces seem to work, seem to make sense, but until it, you know, develops out there, you know, we still don't know. It's same with Krejci and Hall. That's when we're like, all right, well, David Krejci's a playmaker. Taylor Hall's a great, you know, individual player as well. Seems to work, and then it worked like that. Like it worked perfectly. So it all is going to depend on how they develop out on the ice, but if you look at the multiple factors working in Coyle's favor, you have to imagine that, you know, a bounce back year for him, which, you know, could it be 45, 50 plus points? You know, I think the Bruins would certainly take that in that regard, if that's a line that's still driving play whenever they're on the ice.
I'd take that in a heartbeat. I mean, the last time he put up over 40 points was 56 in 16-17 and then 42 in 15-16. So yeah, I mean, that, you know, if you can get 45, 50 points out of Coyle this year, you take that and run. I mean, that would be very ideal. And I also think it is doable given his line mates, as you said, and also coming off of injury. He's one that, like, a guy like Coyle, you look at just, you know, physically good size, good skater, good in his own zone, good at, you know, cycling the puck, good in the O zone as well. He's someone you expect to just be better. You expect more production out of him. And it hasn't really come yet. In his career. That's always been the knock on him, is he's inconsistent, but the rest of his game is good. That's the thing. I mean, as a second line center, he checks almost all the boxes. The only one he doesn't check is production. And that's obviously a pretty big box to check. That box is pretty important. But he does check all the other boxes. So I do expect Coyle to be much better this year, especially given that he's coming off that injury. Another guy I was thinking about, guys on the team that, you know, could require bounce backs. And I think DeBrusk and Coyle are the obvious ones. Another one could be a guy like Matt Grzelcyk, not to the extent that DeBrusk or Coyle were last year. Grzelcyk was obviously effective. He great numbers next to McAvoy, but I think with the power play, you expect a little bit more out of him. I think there was also some unfair expectations with him, with like being the next Torrey Krug, you know, and like completely stepping in. Because up until then, Grzelcyk had been a third line, you know, left shot defenseman. You know, he's very shifty and he's a good puck mover, but he's not someone who ever was putting up the points or scoring the goals. You know, again, in last year, 20 points in 37 games, which would be a career high. But I still just felt that there were times that, you know, maybe a little more offense out of him would be helpful. Do you think that can be doable this year, given that he might not be next to McAvoy for a lot of the season?
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting just to see how the Bruins, you know, carve out the plan usage-wise for him, because I think we've already talked about Bruins seem to be focused on giving Derek Forbort a try with Charlie McAvoy, and maybe that's some of, you know, giving that top pairing different look. But I think also Cassidy's mentioned before that it's about, you know, protecting Grzelcyk and not putting him in those top pairing minutes to take a beating over the course of a full season, which maybe that's the right move, not in terms of, you know, limiting the offensive production of that top pair, but maybe you're better served with McAvoy, with Grzelcyk in a second pair or a third pairing role where he's able to drive that pairing more or less and be shielded from, you know, the top six matchups like a Tom Wilson or something like that. Not from the challenge of, you know, stymieing these guys offensively, but from just taking the beating from some of these top players. And if maybe the Bruins view Grzelcyk as more of a guy that he's more effective because he's going to be playing 82 games as opposed to, we'll keep him in the top pair and they're going to get a lot of points, but he's going to be limited to 60 games. Like I think Grzelcyk's very much like a guy like Riley, I think, where if you give him a full 82 game slate, he could probably give you 35, 40 points on the blue line. And maybe the Bruins view that as the ideal situation of just having him healthy and in there and generating offense, because even if maybe Grzelcyk, let's say he's bumped to the third pairing, right? That may not be the ideal spot for him, but if he's the go-to guy in your third pair and he's able to get you, 30 plus points, kind of like Sergachev with Tampa Bay, like it's a good problem to have if you got a playmaker like that further down in the depth chart, able to, get those favorable matchups. So I think definitely Grzelcyk's due for, another stronger year. I think you look at the baseline numbers of, 20 points in 37 games, pretty good. But I think there's also room for improvement as well. I think he'd be the first to say that as well. Interested to see how he does, how they kind of divvy up the power play. I think with not only the fact that Grzelcyk had some issues on that top power play unit, but also the fact you don't have Krejci, you could very well have a situation where that top power play unit's pretty drastically augmented. We could have Taylor Hall on there. I think Nick Foligno said that they advertised him being a bit of a net front guy there. Could be McAvoy, could be Grzelcyk. They give him another look. So a whole bunch of different ways you can look at it. But if you look at just how they use Grzelcyk, I think that's going to be the biggest indicator of how they plan out for his season to go. Because even if he's a third pairing regular and he only sparingly sees time with McAvoy, I still think you've got a very good player that can get you 30 plus points from the blue line.
You mentioned advertising Foligno. I'm just imagining in my head, them doing like a sales pitch to Nick Foligno where they have,
it's a PowerPoint.
Yeah, they have a PowerPoint. And they're like, "This could be you."
Be you.
Like, they put like Nick Foligno's face on like someone in a Bruin in front of the net.
Nick Ritchie as a puck's flying off of him down low.
Yes, like this could be you getting abused by other teams' top defensemen in front of the opposing net. But it's funny. I just did the math actually. I pulled out some what's the thing with fractions where you do like two fractions? Like. For instance, like 20 points over 37 games equals N over 82. I forget what that was called, but you just like you.
Dude, why do you think I joined journalism? Because I can't do. I don't even know what you just said.
I have no. I know what I did. I have no idea what I just said, but I did it, and it came out to 44 points over 82 games. So I actually did figure out the math on that one. That's one of the things in math I can do, the projections. That's like when a guy. It's always my favorite when a guy will score like 4 goals in the first 2 games. And I love tweeting out like, oh, over an 82, so-and-so's on pace for like, 172 goals or something. Love doing that. You're right though on Grzelcyk. You're right. I mean, again, I do wonder how much he'll add to the power play, what he can bring, what more he can bring offensively. And I also think, if he plays less tough minutes, if he's not playing the other team's top offensive guys, because again, Krug never really did either. In his time here, that was Chara ate those minutes up. So I think it'll be good for a guy like Grzelcyk in some capacity to not play against the other team's top lines at all times. You just wonder if down the lineup, if they're bigger, tougher lines, dumping the puck in on Grzelcyk's side, maybe then that's not the best idea. That's kind of what the Blues did in 2019. Sorry to bring that up. Anyways, another guy actually was Pastrnak. I feel like Pastrnak at times was not scoring as much as maybe he was used to. I think it's a pretty fair bet to assume he's going to be back at the top of the Bruins leaderboard with scoring this year, just because he's not injured. He's fine now. Posted a picture the other day playing street hockey.
Like an absolute cannon. I think it was Spoke Z at the tweet. Like it was absolute rocket of a shot too.
Yes. So he is back. I think Pastrnak we can chalk down for a bunch of goals this year. I don't think that's something that will be out of reach, so to speak. So those are the bounce back guys. I don't think there's anybody we missed.
I would probably just say a quick one like Brandon Carlo. Maybe I think it's more health. That's more health than anything. And again, I think Brandon Carlo is what he is as a player, is a shutdown guy with probably a little bit of a limited offensive ceiling. But I think if he stays healthy, he's very effective in what his role is, especially on this blue line that has quite a few smaller, more playmaking guys. But whether it be with Grzelcyk or Mike Riley, I think the Bruins are very interested to see how that kind of mix works out, because we've seen it in the past with him and Torrey Krug. Carlo has said it himself that he likes playing with a partner that's more of a puck moving, kind of offensively minded guy and playing off of that. So you hope that, he gets through a full season with a clean bill of health, no concussion issues come up again, and becomes that effective kind of PK ace on that team, because they desperately need him the way this decor is kind of set up for this upcoming season.
Agreed. That's a good one. I didn't think of him. But you're right. Absolutely health wise. Hopefully he is, fortunately for him, back to full health and not dealing with the issues he had lingering around last season. So you can expect these guys to have, again, bounce back years. Anyways, that is today's episode of Bruins Beat. Connor, before you go, what can the listeners look forward to over at BSJ?
Yeah, we just did a nice breakdown of Tomas Hertl rumors this past weekend on Boston Sports Journal. We'll be looking at more lineup questions, maybe look at Linus Ullmark and what Bruins are expecting from him. Bruins also have their upcoming golf tournament this week, and we will be in person doing interviews with players once again for the first time since March 2020. So that'll be good.
Yes, since they had the tables. Remember they had the tables separating the media and the players?
Exactly. So we will be on site there getting interviews with whoever's available to talk to us. So I'm sure we'll finally get some actual tangible news looking ahead to training camp. So we'll have all that stuff over at BSJ. So subscribe at bostonsportsjournal.com. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do that at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that for CLNS Media. I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.